Greetings, YouTube! The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today, we are going to talk about the spell Counterspell, an abjuration spell. It has gone over into the 2024 realm. We're going to compare it to this one, which is the Legacy version. Yes, the thumbnail says it got a huge nerf, and it did get a huge nerf. Not sure why that was, but is it worth using still? We're going to get into that. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or comment. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. All right, Counterspell, we originally gave this spell an A+. This was a go-to spell. If you don't know, I have 4 criteria for grading spells, and I've got a little note card here that I use for this. But here are my 4 criteria for grading spells. Can I use this spell every combat? Is this one easy to use? It's a reaction. Of course, I'm going to use this multiple times in a combat. Will I use this spell every combat relative to other spells? So the answer to that is absolutely. I always have this spell prepared and ready to go. That is in the Legacy version of Dungeons and Dragons. Thirdly, is it going to have an impact upon my character? Is it integral to a build? Absolutely. This is part of any sorcerer, warlock, wizard, and possibly a paladin build. And is it going to have an impact on the adventuring party? Massively. A massive impact. So it was a 3rd level spell, 1 reaction, usable by sorcerer, warlocks, wizards, Oath of Redemption paladins, Oath of Watcher paladins, range of 60 feet. It only required a somatic component. The fact that it is a reaction made it great. And so you attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. So you came upon a creature, something, an enemy wizard, an enemy warlock, enemy anything, it's casting a spell, you cast Counterspell. The creature is casting a 3rd level spell or lower, it's gone. No effect. Spell fails, no effect. Creature loses its action. The creature uses its spell slot, it's gone. If the casting of the spell was 4th level or higher, so you could cast a 3rd level, a fireball, which is a 3rd level spell normally at 4th level, and you would have to do this. You'd have to make an ability check using your spell casting ability, which for like a wizard was intelligence. The DC is 10 plus the spell's level, so if it was a 4th level spell, then you had to do a 14. On success, the spell fails. No effect. Action is used from the enemy caster, and the slot is gone. You can upcast this when you cast this using a spell slot of 4th level or higher. The interrupted spell has no effect if its level is less than or equal to the level of the spell. So you could say that that enemy caster cast a 4th level fireball. You just used a 4th level slot to cast Counterspell, and it was gone. Okay, so that spell was an A+. Now, let's look at the new Counterspell from 2022. Still a 3rd level spell, still a reaction, still range of 60 feet, still a somatic component, still usable by sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, Oath of Redemption paladins, Oath of Watcher paladins, same exact classes, still instantaneous, still an abjuration spell, and there are things to be said for an abjuration spell with a wizard, especially if you are a abjuration wizard. Now, here is the big difference. There is no save on this spell. It was a check, or it just happened automatically. This one is a con save. That's the big nerf. That's one of the big nerfs. You attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. The creature makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the spell dissipates with no effect, and the action, bonus action, or reaction used to cast it is wasted. The action is wasted. If that spell was cast with a spell slot, the slot is not expended. I don't like the fact that they use contractions in here. I like to have the word spelled out, so I don't like saying isn't. I like saying is not. It's very clear. So the reaction is, which you take when you see a creature within 60 feet of yourself casting a spell with a verbal, somatic, or material component. So you have to see them, but again, Constitution saves. Not as I'm a player, and I'm trying to get something to make a Constitution save, not one of my favorite physical attributes to target. We're going to talk about that a little bit here in just a bit. The second part of this is that the spell slot is not gone, which is way different. So there's two things that are very different from this. One, I can no longer just stop a spell from happening. And I don't really have that much control over it. Now, it's a saving throw, so there are ways of getting around saving throws, and we've done a lot of videos on that particular thing. If you're a sorcerer and you're casting Counterspell, you could have innate sorcery up, and innate sorcery is going to raise the DC of the spell. If you are a wizard who is a divination wizard, then you have portent dice, and you can give that over if you have a low one to give to the enemy caster so that they would fail their save. Warlocks not necessarily can do anything about that. Sorcerers have several things. They could heighten this spell, causing a disadvantage on the saving throw. And if they are a wild magic sorcerer, then they get a D4 with the bend luck. If you happen to have a bard in the party who happens to be a Oath of Eloquence, you could cast Unsettling Words. That has to be done off of this reaction. That's a bonus action on their turn, but it gives the target a penalty on their next saving throw equal to the die that is the inspiration die the bard is using. So there are ways to get around that particular saving throw, but now it is still a saving throw. Now it is not automatic, which is the problem. It was kind of automatic before. There were circumstances where it could be automatic, and then there are circumstances where you had to do a check. This one now is just a flat-out saving throw. Now, the other thing I want to look at is I want to look at about that Constitution save. So, here we've got a list of all the classes. And in this list, we've got some basic information about each class. Primary, ability, hit point die, saves. That's what we want to look at. Now, like a barbarian, we're not really going to care about Counterspell against a barbarian. They're not really casting spells. Bard, so let's look at all of the spellcasting classes, starting with Bard. Bards are not trained in dexterity or charisma, which means that they are not going to be getting that big of a bonus to a Constitution saving throw. So it's one of their weaker saving throws. So that's good. Clerics, wisdom or charisma, no training in con saves. That's good. Druids, intelligence or wisdom. So con saves are not going to be great. I mean, basically, they're going to be getting a bonus from their Constitution modifier if they have one. And then any like magic items, like if they happen to have a Ring of Protection, then they might get a +1 on that. But for instance, if the Druid is making a wisdom saving throw, then they're adding their proficiency bonus in that. And that could be usually an extra +4 on top of their wisdom modifier. So Constitution, not the main attribute for a Bard, not the main attribute for a Cleric, not the main attribute for a Druid. Paladins can cast some spells, not trained in charisma, or not trained in Constitution. Rangers can cast some spells, not trained in Constitution. Sorcerers, trained in Constitution and charisma. That's the problem right there. Warlocks, wisdom and charisma, and wizards, intelligence and wisdom. And finally, we get down to artificers. They are trained in Constitution too. So sorcerers and artificers might be a problem with Counterspell because they are trained in Constitution. And I would guess that a sorcerer is going to have a minimum of a +5 or +6, depending on if they got a +4. So let's say starting out at first level, they're going to have a +2 proficiency bonus, and then either a +1 or +2 to con, because we all kind of put at least a 12 to 14 in con, meaning they're going to have a +3 to a +4 starting out for that saving throw, and then that's just going to get higher as they go up. with their proficiency bonus, and then they might get a ring of protection. Same thing for the artificers. The other classes, it's basically just going to be their constitution modifier, which is not one of their major attributes, so it shouldn't be that high. We don't really have to worry about rangers, that kind of thing, our fighters, things. They're not really casting spells, but that is assuming that these classes are going to be straight class, not a poly class where we're taking multiple classes. You could have a fighter wizard, and the fighter could have started out as a fighter, which means that they get strength and constitution saving throw training, which means it's going to be very hard to counterspell a fighter wizard or a fighter sorcerer or any of that. So this, counterspell was an integral part of the game. And don't get me wrong, it still is an integral part of the game. I mean, if I look at my 4 criteria for grading, can I use this spell every combat? Yes, and I'm going to use it multiple times in a combat. I'm still going to use it. It's a reaction. I still want to have a chance of shutting off a dangerous spell. Will I use it relative to other spells? Absolutely, I will prepare this spell still. Is it integral to a build for my character? Yes. Not as integral as it was before. And does it have an impact upon the adventuring party? Absolutely. When it works, it has less of an impact now than it did in the Legacy version, where if you knew what spell they were casting, then you could just upcast. Or you could guess and you could just say, I don't want that really powerful spell to go off, so I'm just going to throw this out at like 5th or 6th level. So what are we giving this? Let's look over here. We are moving this down because it is now a Constitution saving throw. There is no chance of this automatically happening anymore. That's a knock. That knocks it down from an A+ to an A. And because the spell slot doesn't go away, which I think is dumb, that knocks it down to an A-. Just in power level and just by the fact that it is going to have an impact on overall combat and the overall party and the integrity of the party dynamics and the success of the party in combat, but not as much as the old one. All right, that is what I have for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody